All right. Hello, everybody. So this is History 3570, right? 3570. And we are examining, or throughout this course, we've been looking at gender and sexuality, right? In different forms, in different texts, and the way in which different cultures, right, perceive women and trans and anything that's related to LGBTQ, right? BTQ, excuse me. And so we're just kind of looking at different forms, right, and understanding it. And so today we're going to be looking at presentations from students, right, different groups. They've been working on it for the past few weeks, just interrogating different aspects, right, of its meaning. And they're going to be sharing their perspectives, what they find most interesting, right, viewpoints, etc., about these different experiences. And so we're going to start out with Indigenous Latin America and have this group move forward. So thanks.
Hello. So we're presenting Indigenous Latin America. Hope you guys can see the full screen. So we decided to particularly focus on the experiences of women in Indigenous Latin America. And we are starting with Nubia Balderrama Vara's story. I really connected to this story because she held a very unique perspective on her community. She felt that because she was so excluded from men's spaces, she had a very singled out perspective of her community, and she didn't get to view the other perspective. So she mentions the hairdo ritual that followed her along her teenage years. When she's little, she gets her hair done into braids with little ribbons in her hair, and she first hates it, but then she gets used to it and she like enjoys the process. But then as she grows older, this process becomes more like strict and focused on her looks and stuff. So she goes to church and she sees this ritual there where these girls are carrying the Virgin on their shoulders and they look stressed and tired, and this makes her upset. She doesn't want to go to church anymore. And as she grew older, she got away from the church and she began to explore her town a little bit more. And she found herself including herself in more of men's spaces. And she really enjoyed being that woman that was in men's spaces. And this led her to starting to attend meetings, organizational meetings for the Reto Altapasteco. And because of this, she led that ritual, that ceremony, to be more inclusive. And the next person is going to talk more about that.
So, El Reto al Teposteco is an annual event in Tepoztlan, Mexico on the 7th and 8th of September. It is a combination of Hispanic Catholic religion and indigenous cultural beliefs. Although the event is a mix of the two religious beliefs, the indigenous community does provide insight on their indigenous culture, customs, and their values. The indigenous citizens of Tepoztlan have a lot of pride in this event because it demonstrates Indigenous empowerment and resistance. They demonstrate how they are still strongly connected to their cultural roots regardless of the forced assimilation since the colonization era. This is a community event where both men and women participate. However, there are some controversy mentioned in Silvia Marcos' chapter 9 regarding women not having a bigger voice in decision making or being given secondary traditional roles. But modifications have now been made on the gender roles of this event. There is now more women participation in the political and social aspect, as well as modifications that does demonstrate women empowerment and their fight for higher positions. And on the top left corner, I have an image from El Reto al Teposteco. It's a flyer from back in 2016. And on the bottom right, there's an image of a YouTube clip where they do showcase a certain part of El Reto al Teposteco back in 2016. Next slide.
Hi, my name is Jessica, and I will be presenting the oral histories that we made. From Catherine, Catherine interviewed Irad Leon. Irad Leon is a 21-year-old non-binary Latin They graduated from the University of Redlands this year with the psychology and environmental science degrees, and they hope to be a social worker in the near future. Adais interviewed Ermila Castellanos. Ermila Castellanos is a Mexican undocumented immigrant and Adais's mother. Ermina migrated to the United States to flee from her father's machista and sexist ideologies. She commenced her new life as an independent, undocumented Mexican woman and achieved many of her objectives. Jessica interviewed Blanca Flores and Jesus Baez. Both her parents came from Mexico when they were in their 20s in their search for the American dream. Blanca crossed the border with her 2-year-old girl and leaving behind a 6-year-old boy. Both left their families behind and haven't gone back to their towns in 20 years. Jesus and Blanca hope to be homeowners soon. Matthew interviewed Caroline Martinez. Caroline is a third-generation Mexican-American from East Los Angeles and is Matthew's mother. She is a strong, independent, single mother of 2 sons. She graduated from FITM and received her AA in fashion merchandising, and then continued on to Cal State LA, where she received her BA in English. She has worked for the city of Los Angeles for more than 30 years. Kevin interviewed Oscar Lara. Oscar is a 38-year-old father of 3 who crossed the border to the US from Mexico at 15, worked hard for everything he has, dropped out of high school his senior year, became a US citizen, and is now a homeowner. Jasmine interviewed Valente Ronquillo. Valente is an undocumented Mexican father of 3. Valente came to the United States in his late teens in the search for the American dream. He is currently a business owner of 3 successful businesses and hopes to become a homeowner. Lastly, Evaristo interviewed Feliciana Castañeda. Feliciana is a 54-year-old Zapotec immigrant who has suffered from epilepsy her whole life. She has worked in the factories her entire life and hopes to one day retire and go back to her pueblo, El Nigromante.
Hi, this is Kevin. So for our cultural product, we decided to create memes. We created 3 different memes. We chose to create these memes because we thought it was the best way to show struggles of Latin American Indigenous women. Creating memes was one of the most creative ways to show what we wanted to show relating our project. Each meme was created with the intent to illustrate the struggle that Indigenous women have to go through and certain rituals that they go through as well. These memes were created using the ideas from readings and notes from class. Each meme will show in picture what Indigenous women in Latin America had to go through. It will show the injustices they had to suffer. Each meme will be related to our topic and will have similarities to them. Overall, these memes will show us the struggles of Indigenous women in Latin America. Each meme shows how Indigenous women in Latin America try to progress by themselves. Next slide.
So the first meme that we're going to be talking about was created by me, Evaristo Martinez. So the meme pictured says, "Oh, women can't join the band. That's fine. We'll make our own." This is a reference to the Mije tribe that's located in Oaxaca, which the maestra whose name I'm blanking on right now, she started this band because she couldn't help but notice that like in all like the cultural bands in Oaxaca, it's predominantly dominated by men. And she wanted to see more representation of women, and so she decided to start an all-women band, which is the Banda Femenil Filarmónica Mujeres del Viento Florido. And so it's an empowerment band that allows women to play. And even though other bands do allow women, this is one of the first bands in Oaxaca to feature exclusively all women playing every instrument. And it's a nod to the fact that in Oaxaca, like, you know, like the women are sometimes regarded as not having like the ability to play like predominantly brass instruments like trumpets, tubas, trombones. And this band is kind of like a, oh yeah, yes, we could do that. Next slide.
The next meme was created by me, Jasmine Ronquillo. And this, as you can see, it says, con las tortillas en la mano, pero de que gano, gano. So I decided to do it in Spanish specifically because it is based in Santa Maria, Coapan, Puebla. And I chose it because I found it important to recognize and acknowledge women for their hard work in the community. This tradition is done to commemorate ancestral women who made tortillas and walked various kilometers door to door selling tortillas. And this was very important because these women historically would wake up early to make handmade tortillas and run to another town to feed their husbands who were working and didn't have time to come back home. These women turned this into an economic opportunity to sell their tortillas on the streets, and they made a decent living. And today, an estimated 70% of the town's women are employed making tortillas by hand. And this is a celebration of the town to commemorate these women who walked about 4.5 kilometers to the city of Tehuacan, Puebla, carrying up to 10 kilograms of tortillas.
Hello, my name is Matthew Hernandez, and I created this last meme. The picture says, "Brace yourselves, women are coming." And I wanted to create this meme to show that women are now being empowered to take a stand and vote, because in many Indigenous Latin America governments, women are not allowed to vote. This meme itself is a reference to the women of Guevea de Humboldt, a small town in the southern state of Oaxaca, where only men were allowed to vote. These women filed a complaint with state authorities, arguing they should be included in the rolls. And a federal electoral court sided with them, and on September 20th, they participated in local elections for the first time. That's it.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Let's give snaps, applause, all that good stuff for this group. Thank you so much. And we're going to move now from Indigenous Latin America, right, to the rest of Indigenous spaces, right, which is Asia, India, Canada, Pacific, right, other areas that we've been looking at in our textbook. So let's go ahead and welcome that group forward. I believe, is it Daniel that will be sharing his screen?
Yeah, one moment. All right, so we're going to be, hello class, we're going to be talking about Indigenous Asia, Canada, India, and Pacific. It's going to be starring Carlos Delgado, Anthony Ramirez, Iscar Sega, Daniel Jacobo, Brian Lam, Peony Lee, and Geraldine Munoz. So we're going to be selecting memes as cultural product to address a serious issue in a comedic way. Next slide. Asia, Korea, and Vietnam.
Hi, I'm Peony, and I'll be discussing Korea and Vietnam. Confucian ideology was still rampant in Korea, meaning women were expected to stay at home and reproduce for the sake of their family. However, courts allowed Korean women to have lives outside of their husbands and families. In fact, poor relationships with their husbands are sometimes the cause for these women becoming shamans. This is because women often go through suffering before becoming shamans. Devoting to their duty helps the shaman gain back control of their lives. And pictured on the left is a picture of a female shaman dressed as a male spirit and a male shaman dressed as a female spirit. And next slide, please. Lendong is a spiritual ritual performed by Vietnamese spirit mediums. And the religions they are part of, Tao Mo, offers comfort and healing for suffering in the spirit medium's life. Tao Mo is an empowering religion for women. Female spirits are highly respected and worshipped, and women who practice the same religion form bonds with one another. One thing Kut and Lendong have in common are that their performances of spirits is playful and humorous. They don't hold back on presenting important male spirits in a distasteful manner. And on the left is a picture of a female spirit medium dressed as a male spirit and a male spirit medium dressed as a female spirit. And this is my meme. It's meant to highlight the solidarity between the shamans and the spirit mediums. Both men and women who practice these religions accept their spirit as part of their duty, even if it means having to dress masculine or feminine. Duty matters to them more than looking girly or manly.
now to Pacific, Hawaii, Australia, and other islands.
So the first places that we talk about are ancient Hawaii and Australia. And for these specific regions, I chose to talk about how like social class or social status kind of means a lot within these specific communities. Like in ancient Hawaii, social class plays a major role because it was split into three categories: the ali, which is basically royalty, commoners, and slaves. And in ancient Hawaii, women with royal blood were did not have to do like common or labor extensive work. They were allowed to do extracurricular activities like learning how to hula dance and learning how to surf, which is why one of the female rulers of Hawaii was a great surfer. And then for Australia, we talk about the Narangiri women who were storytellers as well as kind of like teachers, because when they tell stories, there's many lessons or even singular lessons that could be learned from these stories that they tell. And these stories get passed on from generations to generations orally. And these are actually some of the stories that have been told throughout history.
My name is Carlos Delgado, and I will be presenting the role of Pacific Islander women. So the role of Pacific Islander women within their communities and as a region overall is one of the most important roles a person can take. Within the Pacific Islands, their gender roles were influenced by their culture, social systems, local institutions, and their religion. However, despite the fact that the majority of men within most of the Pacific Islands had more decision-making power than women, women still made vital decisions. Men mainly focused their attention to issues within their household and community, whereas women were members of communities and other groups where they made decisions relating to their village. As you can see, women within the Pacific Islands did indeed have very important roles to fulfill, but unfortunately, in patriarchal societies, women frequently came across limitations and restrictions that hindered the development of their community. So the meme that I created for the Pacific Islands displays two indigenous women laughing together at the fact that they said that their husband said he was the man of the house. This is funny to them because, as we know, many women from the Pacific Islands had extremely important decisions to make, and which is not up to the men.
Canada, femicide, and suffrage.
Hi, my name is Jalali, and I decided to focus on how the struggles of Indigenous women is in Canada. So, mass killing of Indigenous people in Canada are examples of racially based gender abuse, the material and discourses consequences of patriarchal power ties. It creates a cultural paradigm that puts the murder of indigenous people in the light of trafficking, distancing this abuse from the current negative material consequences of colonization. Next slide, please. Women's suffrage. The women's suffrage campaign was a year's struggle to resolve basic equality and fairness questions. Women in Canada, especially Asia and Indigenous women, face fierce opposition as they sought fundamental human rights, including suffrage. Emily Howard, Canada's first psychiatric, began an ambush movement in Ontario to grant women the same voting privileges as men. Suffrage or freedom to vote wasn't only available to British males above the age of 20 who occupied a home at that time. Next slide, please.
So the meme I have created, it's gonna be one of the Beothuks. They're like the natives, Canadians that used to live before they were conquered. So basically, the British and the French had invaded them, and they invaded the natives, and they murdered majority of them. And since maple syrup was like probably like one of the best foods in Canada, they basically just like took it away from them. Not to India, the caste system.
Hi, I'm Anthony. When looking at India, I really wanted to focus on before and after the addition of the Europeans in their country. Before Europe arrived, India was mostly peaceful and egalitarian. Men and women both did similar work similar education, and similar expectations culturally, especially when they would marry. Men and women had equal choice on who they did or did not marry. Until the introduction of the Europeans, the caste system was eventually introduced, and eventually the indigenous were lowered down to the lower bottom class. Those lower class tend to suffer the most in terms of education, health, and with the advent of Hinduism, the law has made it more restrictive. Next slide.
Okay. You're having trouble right now.
No problem.
There you go.
The lower class tended to do work like this, very grueling, hard labor. The ones below are known as the untouchables, who are also tend to be mostly indigenous people who did the lower class work, such as this, dealing with the dead or sewage. Hinduism also placed more social and religious expectations on women, most notably is marriage. They were expected to marry and be pure when they married, which tended to be as young as 9 years old, in order to retain their status in the upper class, as well as keeping the lower class where they are, not be able to excel any higher. Next slide. The meme reflects just that. Here's a woman who's shocked. My reaction when I found out my new husband is older than my parents, which tended to happen because the men were looked at as the support and the provider. So they tend to look for men who made the most money and women who are the most pure, which meant older men and younger women. Thank you.
That's our oral histories.
So the person that I interviewed was one of my father's friends who was an immigrant from Mexico. He immigrated to the United States at a very young age and faced many challenges and hardships. But despite these challenges, he became an elementary school teacher.
I interviewed my grandmother, who grew up facing many struggles through her adolescence, from dealing with abusive home life while struggling to come into her own as a woman, to gender roles and racial tensions among her peers.
The person I have interviewed was my grandfather Rogelio. He had a challenging childhood life in which he and his mom had run from his abusive father to be free and start a new chapter in their lives.
The person I interviewed was my friend Jason, and it was about his journey and his struggle with his cultural traditions as well as his sexuality. Throughout his journey, he learned how to overcome hate and grudges, as well as learn to forgive and always to reach out to people.
The person that I interviewed was my grandmother, Mariana, who had a challenging life when she was a child because her mother died when she was 5 years old. So she had to overcome many challenging situations that made her a stronger woman, and she became a very important person in the town since she was one of the first people that taught catechism to children.
I interviewed my partner, who happens to be mixed and LGBT. They're non-binary and bi. One story that stood out to me was how they were chosen by an actual Japanese hibakusha, which is an atomic bomb survivor, to be the model for a Japanese kid in an animated film. And I actually have photos of that in the next slide. And they also did other acting roles which you can also see in the next slide, in Helena Beat and Modern Family.
Thank you, class.
All right, thank you so much, folks. I know we went over time with this group. I apologize to the other groups that are remaining and need time. Thank you so much. Let's give applause and snaps. And let's go ahead and move straight into Christianity and Catholicism. And again, please be mindful of time, folks, because we do have 3 more groups left.
Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear it? I'm sorry if you can't.
No.
Okay, shit. Okay. I don't know why the audio is not working. Could I pause this real quick, Professor?
Yes, go ahead and pause.
Okay, thank you.
You have to share your audio when you share your screen.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are the Christianity and Catholicism group, and our presentation is called A Female Perspective of Christianity and Catholicism.
Up first, Gabriella with Women, Jesus Christ, and the Bible.
There are three main characters that I think highlight how Christianity and specifically the Bible established the roles of women. It begins with Eve. There's a sense of women being inferior in Christianity, starting with Eve, created second to Adam. She is blamed for the downfall of man for tempting Adam with the forbidden fruit. In contrast, Mary is largely treated as the ideal virginal woman, which means she is a mother dedicated to Jesus Christ from birth to death. The concept of Jesus being born from a virgin birth is one that is not immediately included in Christian religious texts. Mary, referred to as the Virgin Mary, may come from the Aramaic word for girl being changed to virgin in an early translation. Though there have been criticisms on the concept of a virgin birth, Mary's Immaculate Conception was accepted by the Catholic Church in 1854. In non-canonical writing, Mary Magdalene is described as a follower, disciple, and Christ's lover. The view that Mary Magdalene is a prostitute or seen as a directly opposing figure to the Virgin Mary comes from an interpretation of Luke. It is in Luke 7 that a woman described as a former sinner is to have anointed Christ at his death. Though it is not implicitly named Mary Magdalene, she is attributed as being that woman, a concept that leaves Mary Magdalene's image not as a disciple of Christ, but as a sinful character.
Next up, Brandon.
Now on to the conservativeness and the oppression of women. Conservative views on women and their rights within Christianity and Catholicism limited their roles outside of being used solely for procreation and domestic duties. I grabbed two quotes from the text that read, "The early Christians viewed sex as sinful. They believed that women could not control their sexuality, and this was an ever-present threat to men." And then another quote, "The Catholic Church reaffirmed its old rule that only men could be priests, but did allow women to teach and care for the sick outside convents." I also grabbed a quote from the Bible that reads, it's 1 Timothy 2:11-15. "A woman should learn in quietness and full submission. I do not permit a woman to teach or to have authority over a man. She must be silent." Now, this really showed how women were oppressed throughout the Christian religion. And the role of nuns, to add to this, was they were just to pray, they got no wages, and all they did was support the convent and do charity work.
Next, Camry with the power dynamic of women and the church.
Women show different power dynamics throughout Christianity. For example, nuns were considered to have equal rank as monks. They could govern themselves and maintain independence from the hierarchy of the church, whereas second-class nuns without dowries had to become servants for the upper-class nuns. There are power dynamics between married and unmarried women in the church. For example, married women had to give up control to their husbands. They had to be obedient in exchange for having protection. Unmarried women have an alternative option from marriage, which was to join a religious community such as a convent. Being part of a convent was the only way to become equal to men. This is Catalina de Eroso, aka Lieutenant Nun, a former nun from the Basque Convent in San Sebastian, Spain. Joined the convent from the age of 4 to 15. She left the convent disguised as a man to become a soldier, then became a lieutenant.
Hi, my name is Raymond, and Rudy and I will talk about the agency and control women have in Christianity. Agency and control in Christianity is a complicated subject. In the Old Testament, we have to preface that treating women as lesser was established in the Bronze Age by men, and that is still held up today. In the Ode to a Capable Wife, it really is a telling of how a woman should live by a man's standards, but not by their own. And in the book of Genesis, with Eve and the tree of knowledge, they both took hands in sin, but only Eve was blamed. In the New Testament, the canon was selected by the Roman Church. The way women are portrayed vary throughout book to book, with Paul stressing equality between man and woman, while Timothy demeans women, making it so that they are less than the apostles in the eyes of the reader.
The Gospel of Mary Magdalene describes the words of encouragement Jesus told Mary to teach his disciples so they could preach. However, the Gospel was considered non-canon because it demonstrated a woman's contribution to the early Christian movement. In other non-canon scriptures of the New Testament, credited to Thomas, Jesus apparently made Mary Magdalene's spirit resemble a man's spirit. It could also be said that within Lieutenant Nun, Catalina de Arauso also embodied the idea of a male living spirit. This is described on page 78 of Lieutenant Nun, where Catalina states, "His Holiness seemed amazed to hear such things, and graciously gave me leave to pursue my life in men's clothing."
Next, Haley.
I'll be discussing flexibility in the church. It is stated Jesus treated all people, regardless of gender, as equals, and all of them could achieve the kingdom of God. This can be seen as some of his followers included Mary of Bethany, Joanna, Susanna, and Mary Magdalene, who all brought financial resources, knowledge, and intelligence. Even after Jesus' death, women played a large role by providing homes for meetings where many people would convert. Converting was important as high-status women actively converted their husbands, courts, and servants to Protestant faith. For a short time, new Protestant churches let women preach, although this did not last long since the belief that women were inferior and must be subordinate resurfaced. This sexist belief is seen throughout time. There is always a rise and fall of all women's important role in the church. There was a presence of women in the priesthood during the first millennium. Until the 3rd century, there were women deacons, presbyters, priests, and even bishops. Although later on, there was pressure to subordinate women, and the priesthood was close to them. Those included Roman Catholics, Episcopalians, and Orthodox churches, although some Protestant churches actually supported women's rights within and outside the church. My next slide talks about Lady Theodora, who was one of the women who participated as an equal to men in the church. She was a bishop who was known for her strong devotion. Her status is important since she oversaw the same duties a male bishop would at that time.
And finally, Belmarina with modern issues with women in the church.
To begin, I pulled 2 quotes directly from the Bible that gives us a basic summary of what women shouldn't be allowed to do when in a Catholic Christian church. First, women are not permitted to teach or to exercise authority over men, and this comes from 1 Tim 2-12. Next, the women should keep silent in churches where they are not permitted to speak, but should be in submission as the law also says. If there's anything you desire to learn, let them ask their husbands at home, for it is a shame for women to speak in church. And this comes directly from 1 Corinthians 14:34-35. So in today, women hold the roles of deacons, sisters, a female pastor, which is a minister or priest of a Christian church, and bishops. It is obviously clear now that although the Bible states it is a shame for women to speak in church, women now can do, teach, administrate, and organize under and for the church. Some subjects that the church are against for women is they oppose abortion rights with few or no exceptions at all. They also prohibit same-sex marriage and also don't support unwed mothers or children out of wedlock.
To preface the cultural product, basically imagine if a giant company tries to relate to people, but they do it in such a horrible way that they just come off as very douchey. Have you ever been scrutinized by a male boss for something out of your control? Ever been ignored by a group of your male peers because they can't relate? And worst of all, have you ever been disregarded online just for being a woman in a male-dominated space? Well, I have something for you.
Hi, my name is Daphne Irauso, but you can call me Lieutenant Nun. I'm here from BAM, a product from San Sebastian Pharmaceuticals, a family company. BAM, the simple way to vertically solve all your daily life problems fast and with a blast. With BAM, your issues will be a thing of the past. Thanks to our team of lead scientists and engineers, we figured out the best way to fix all these daily inconveniences that you may experience out in the real world. Just apply our product to your subject and feel the power of BAM take over. With our patent-pending formula designed by the best teams around the world, this will change your entire outlook on life. With BAM, live your life like a man would without fear of retribution. We at San Sebastian Pharmaceuticals pride ourselves as being a Christian family company, but we can also see how disconnected the church has been. With notable women from the Bible like Eve and Mary Magdalene, we decided to take matters into our own hands. We have a rich history tied to the foundation of this company. I am a descendant of the original Lieutenant Nun Catalina de Erauso, a former nun in training who ran away from the convent to live a life she chose. While they may have done some questionable things, who hasn't done anything questionable? We live in a man's world, so why not make it easier?
BAM is not for everyone. Please consult with a doctor or trained professional before using our product. Some side effects may include, but are not limited to, drowsiness, heartburn, acid reflux, sore throat, blurred vision, developing new allergies, the urge to run away from home, strange urge to gamble, the urge to fight people, the urge to fight relatives, and finally, but not limited to, the urge to colonize indigenous land in the name of Spain. BAM and San Sebastian pharmaceuticals are not liable for any damage that may come with our product. Consult a doctor before taking our product. Available over the counter at a convenience store near you.
That was interesting, to say the least.
I mean, that just sounds like a giant loop for an issue that still won't get solved.
Don't you think it's a bit out of touch for a giant company to be marketing stuff like this?
I think they just made this to pad their pockets. The only thing these companies care about is making more money anyway.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's give applause and snaps and all that good. That was a very interesting advertisement, right? All right. Wonderful work. Very, very creative. All right. Let's hop into Islam.
Okay, so we'll be presenting on Islam and the gender roles within the religion.
Hi, so I'm Jared, and Islam is a, let me see, I have what I was going to say, is a Abrahamic monotheistic religion, and its teachings that Muhammad is the messenger of God, and the Prophet Muhammad began receiving divine revelations, which including that people should submit to one God. The Quran is the final word of God, and that there will be a final judgment where the righteous are rewarded. And other practices, which include the 5 pillars of Islam, that are obligatory acts of worship, and that all people of Islam follow a Islamic law, which focuses on virtually every aspect of life in society, which affects how women are seen and treated. And then next slide.
Hi, my name is Lucy Herrera. So this is mine. I created this meme. So our first cultural meme symbolizes the inequality there is for women in Islam scriptures. In Islam culture, there are multiple scriptures like the Sharia, the Quran, Hadith. The scriptures are the values of God, and it goes more in depth on how people should do their daily living, explains the roles that women and men have to play. In the Quran, it makes it clear that men have status above women. Therefore, women were treated and weren't looked as equal. They were restricted to do many things and were viewed as property for men. Therefore, in the meme, we see a car representing the Quran. Clearly was about to head to a road that allowed equality in both gender, but in the Quran does not encourage that, so it shows the car making the dangerous right turn, picking men have status above women. Next slide.
Hello. So, I'm sorry. It's because I messed up. So this next meme, I'm catering, by the way, is about class and gender within Muslim society. And basically, you see 2 people gossiping about the Muslim woman's status of her dowry because her suitor cannot provide it, so therefore she cannot get married. And it is traditional for men to give the mar, I think that's how you say it, in order to marry the woman and to give it to her family, the dowry. But they can also choose to make it as part as their property, and lawfully it could also be theirs. So it just kind of further goes into how Muslim men are superior over the women, because in the Quran it says that they're superior because they're also obligated to economically provide for them. So next slide.
Hello, my name's Savannah Randall, and this is the slide that I did. And the meme that you see here, depicts 3 Muslim women, and their back is turned to you, but the text reads, "When Allah says each of your wives must be treated equally, and they each request something different," and this kind of plays off of the Quran and the scripture, where multiple marriages are allowed, but only for the males. And they are supposed to, polygamy, or rather polygyny was allowed, then you may marry other women who seem good to you, 2, 3, or 4 of them. But if you fear that you cannot maintain equality among them, marry only one or any slave girl that you may own. The first wife, the primary wife, is not considered at all when asked if they want to expand the marriage. And again, the Quran says that everyone, except for the prophet, who can have more than 4, he can have any woman that is willing to give herself to him. So it kind of seems unfair and skewed that it's multiple marriages only one way. The women don't have a say, and they have to accept it. And their condition, while it is beneficial that they must be treated equally, it's still seemingly unfair. Next slide, please.
Hello, my name is Angel Reese, and the person that I interview is my mother. She was born and raised in Puebla, Mexico, and her upbringing was difficult, for her family was poor, and she was obligated to take responsibilities in chores and looking after her siblings as the oldest in the family. She was raised in a Catholic background and practices her cultural traditions to this day. She was discriminated against when she migrated to the United States, but she found success from being involved with her community here in East LA. The organization that she's part of with is called Inner City Struggles. Yeah. And the next person, Savannah Randall, interviewed a California senior citizen named Mala, her grandmother's best friend, about her life in the state. Joaquin de los Santos interviewed a friend of our family, a close friend, to know more about her way of going into success. Catherine Mahai interviewed her family, Andrea, whose life has excelled above and beyond the obstacles and expectations others have of her. Jared Bingham interviewed his grandmother about her challenges as a single parent and maintaining a career. Susie Hairdo interviewed her close family friend. Karina immigrated to the United States for a better future for her children and herself, that being making many sacrifices in her life. That's it for the slide. And we're done. Yeah.
All right, excellent. I have Jacqueline. Did Jacqueline get a chance to present, or is she not here?
Yeah, I'm here. I can present of my interview.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I interviewed Mary, a 35-year-old African American who is a friend of our family, close friend. She grew up in the Bronx, New York, having in a below poverty lifestyle. She grew up having a racism encounters, alcoholic parents, domestic abuse, and sexual harassment. Although her story has a happy ending, despite experiencing racial discrimination, she worked hard to become a lawyer.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much. Let's give snaps and applause for this group. Thank you so much. And we're gonna hop in. I know we're at 4:02, right? So please hang in there, folks. We want to be mindful of people's times, but we're going over. Let's go to Buddhism.
Sorry about that, just taking a little longer than expected. Okay, so hello everyone, and thank you for being here as we present our topic of Buddhism. My name is Rick, alongside Megan, Sophia, Key, Valerie, Aniston, and Cecily, and I will introduce in Buddhism the various schools and its doctrines that are typically followed. First, we must understand what is Buddhism. Buddhism is the path to Buddha, which is enlightened one. Buddhism is a protest from Hinduism, which follows a social class that discriminates people that are not born within that structure. Buddhism welcomes all individuals and follows a common doctrine, which is the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. The three schools are Theravada, the Theravada, Mahayana, and the Vajrayana. Theravada follows the Pali Canon scriptures. They're very conservative to its teachings, and its doctrine is to achieve Arhat, which is enlightened one. The picture on the bottom right is the Shilai Temple in Hacienda Heights. They follow the Theravada teachings. The gate was closed due to pandemic, so unfortunately could not go further. The Mahayana, the next school, is a branch off Theravada and follows the six perfections as opposed to Arhat, and sutras to achieve enlightenment. The difference is that the Mahayana is deviates from the Theravada in terms of for selfless reasons. The Vajrayana is a subset of the Mahayana, which follows tantras, sacred mantras, and guidance from a specific guru to reach enlightenment. So depending on the individual's choices, anyone can practice these teachings. No temple will shun anyone and will welcome anyone into their temple. So I will follow up with Megan.
Hello, my name is Megan Amro. The cultural product we made as a group is a photo collage. We individually chose images that made us think of Buddhism, and inadvertently, at least made me, but maybe as a whole, whether gender and sexuality has influenced our chosen images. And then I talked a little bit about the Rinzai-ji Zen temple, where I went to in downtown Los Angeles. But at my visit, there were only monks at this temple, and I had assumed that men were only allowed to become monks at the monastery and other things like that. But through the readings, I learned that nuns are actually able to be a part of monastic life. And the quote I'm just going to summarize below is where Buddha relents and allows women to become a part of monastic life through very weird, oddly specific patriarchal ways. And next slide.
Okay, so now I'll be talking about something that Rick mentioned earlier called the Four Noble Truths. The first noble truth is that life implies suffering. The terms that you see in the parentheses is what each truth stands for. So for example, the first rule is called Daka. I may pronounce them wrong. I'm not totally sure how to pronounce them right. But the first rule is Daka, which translates to suffering. And the second noble truth is the cause of suffering is attachment to things. And the term in parentheses is Samudaya, which translates to coming to existence. And the third noble truth is overcome desire and therefore end suffering. And the term in parentheses is called Nirodha, and it translates to cessation and release. And the fourth noble truth is the way to conquer desire and cravings is to follow the eightfold path and then become enlightened. And the term in the parentheses is called MAGA, and that translates to liberation, which means basically enlightenment. The symbolic meaning to the noble truths is that it represents the awakening of Buddha, and if Buddha's followers follow the same routine or the same truths, then they can potentially reach the same spiritual experience as Buddha himself. And the four truths became central importance in the Theravada tradition of Buddhism, and it's less prominent in the Mahayana tradition. Next slide.
Okay, and for my slide, I'm going to be talking about the Bikuni. The Bikuni is a fully ordained female monastic in Buddhism. The Bikuni women had to fight for their right to be a monk, since the female monk was not created until many years after the male monks. Buddha was very reluctant to allow women into the Sangha, and he created the monastic law code that put women as subordinates to men. And then I have a quote that says here, Buddha is said to have told Ananda, his closest disciple, that since women had joined the holy life, it would only survive for half as long. And then the photo I have depicted is of the female monks being ordained by a male monk. Next slide.
So I was supposed to do the Eightfold Path. Go back, please. I'm sorry. Okay, so each of these images portray the Eightfold Path, and the one with the hands is right understanding, and the one with the dotted colors is right thought, and the speech bubble is right speech, and the word with action, it's supposed to be right action, and the money and the wheat, that is supposed to depict a right livelihood, and then there's a right effort with the guy trying to lift up the boulder, and that woman with trying to turn away those desires, that's a right mindfulness, and the final one is right concentration. You may proceed to the next slide.
Hi, my name is Cecily, and I'm here to talk about the chakras. In Buddhism, there are 4 chakras that lead to enlightenment. One chakra is called the Manipura, which is also known as the navel chakra, which represents creativity. Another chakra is called the Anahata chakra, also known as the heart chakra, which represents balance. The third chakra is called the Vishuddha, which is also known as the throat chakra, which represents self-expression. The last chakra is called the Sahasrara chakra, which is also known as the crown chakra, which represents wisdom. Now we will talk about our oral history projects.
For our oral history projects, I did mine on my grandmother, who was a Spanish immigrant, moved to America to raise a family. Megan did hers on her Aunt Martha, who was one of the only openly gay people in her family. Sophia did hers on her friend from Slovakia, and LGBT discrimination there. Cecily did hers on her grandpa and his life growing up in East LA and the racism he got. Next slide. And Rick did his on his former high school English teacher, who discussed her life in a mini biography. Kai did hers on her mother and talked about her Vietnamese Buddhist practice. And then Valerie did hers on her father, who was an immigrant from Mexico. I'm done.
Rick, can you go back to my slide? I haven't presented yet.
Sure, yeah, sorry, I might have skipped over you by accident.
So I'm going to present some Buddhism practice in Northern Vietnam. Well, the center of the practicing in Buddhism in Northern Vietnam is making offering and make wish, because there most of the people who practice this
offer a make-wish a woman. So the religious place like pagoda, temple are usually considered to be a woman's space. Yeah, that's it.
All right, excellent. So let's give a round of applause, snaps, and all that good stuff to every group, right? Well, not only to this group, but to each and every one of you, right? Wonderful, wonderful work, very informative, right? As you can see, all of the different perspectives, the viewpoints, the experiences, right? And we've been looking at, you know, how are both males, females, trans, right, et cetera, gender fluidity, what do these experiences look like, right, in different spaces in the world. And so with that, we will close our recording session of this presentation.